Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to second this motion tonight. I hope that those speaking tonight do not shift the focus of this debate into the semantics of whether this under-occupation penalty is a subsidy or a tax. This would really be a sideshow, ducking the very serious issue in hand. What we need to focus on is the impact that this penalty will have on 1,600 of our borough's lowest income households and what we, as a borough, can do about it on a practical level to help those most in need. Let's look at the facts. This penalty is going to affect 1,600 households in our borough, making them between 670 to 1,800 per year worse off. This is at a time when the welfare benefit uprating bill has capped benefit rises to 1%, which means that incomes are already being eroded by inflation. Let us remember that this penalty will hit working people on housing benefit who have a spare room, not just unemployed residents. Nationally, 1,400 working residents will be hit, more than 20% of those affected. Also, the penalty doesn't just apply to new tenants, but also to those who have been placed in their properties by the council and who have lived there for several years and are settled in their communities. Also, the penalty disproportionately affects disabled people. Shockingly, 2/3 of the households hit are home to someone who is disabled, and out of the 660,000 household hit, 230,000 of them are in receipt of disability living allowance, and around 100,000 live in specifically adapted homes. The argument that discretionary housing payment pot has increased to support households simply doesn't stack up. DHPs are capped and time limited, and as Lord Justice Kay has said, fall short of being an adequate solution to the problem. Nationally, the 30 million DHP pot spread among the 230,000 disabled under-occupiers will help very few. Locally, our officers cannot yet tell us which of the households affected are disabled with adapted properties. How then can they start to fairly distribute the small pot of DHP available is anyone's guess. If the Council's 195,000 DHP allocation for 2013 to 14 was split amongst the 1,600 households affected, it equates to only £121 each. And in reality, this DHP pot will also need to be split amongst other groups, including those hit by the benefit cap and households living in unaffordable private rented properties. The argument that this penalty will result in better use of social rented stock, forcing those with a spare room to downsize into a smaller property, just doesn't add up. Where are these 1,600 properties? Last year there were only 814 properties available through HomeBid, and for this current financial year there have only been 532. And these are all property types, not just the smaller properties suitable for downsizing. Even if a smaller property was offered, the cost of moving house is not cheap. As far as I'm aware, no money has been put aside to fund people moving as a result of this penalty. The argument that this policy is a cost-saving exercise in saving 480 million is even weaker. These savings will only be made if those households affected don't move and take the hit to their wallets. It is perverse and dishonest that savings will only be made if people don't move. What is the government's intention here? Is it to make better use of socially rented stock, or to save money by bleeding those households on low incomes dry? It can't have it both ways. But it's worse than that. If people do choose to move because they can't afford to make up the shortfall, many will have to go to private rent properties. Even with one fewer bedroom, the rents of private rent properties are far higher than in the socially rented sector, so the housing benefit bill for the taxpayer could end up going up, not down. At all levels, until and unless we have a larger supply of socially rented properties, this policy simply does not make any sense. For these reasons, I urge you to fully support this motion here tonight, which brings forward practical measures to support 1,600 of our more vulnerable and low-income residents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.